Check while I'm waiting on Miss Brittany to join us. Can you all hear me well today? I've upgraded my equipment just in time for Black History Month because we have so much great stuff. So let me know if you guys can hear me. Brittany, I can see you on the computer, but it's still waiting on you to join on Instagram. If you guys can hear me, can you wave a little bit? Oh, wait, I didn't want to turn off questions. I wanted to turn on questions. Okay. And then go away. You can hear me. Thank you for letting me know you can hear me. I'm so glad that y'all can hear me now because I'm really excited. So we have a great Black History Month presentation planned. So I partnered with actually a childhood friend of mine. We went to school together in elementary school. I don't think we went to school together the whole middle school. And we definitely didn't go to school together in high school. But, through social media, we've kept in contact. And her whole business is learning and sharing Black history facts. And so I thought it would be best to partner with an expert in Black history than for y'all to be waiting on my scattered brain to bring all the facts together, because I'm not good at bringing all the facts together. I'm good at knowing the gist of stuff and kind of like introducing you to it and then be like, hey, you need to go read. So we're still going to ask you to go read and do some more exploration on your own, but we actually have some great stuff that we are bringing to the table in the form of Instagram and social media content. I don't know why Instagram is being a hater, seeing that she's unable to join. You guys
watch not letting me send a request.
Okay, I just sent you a request, so just look for the request and then accept it. Are you watching the live?
Okay.
There you are. All right. Spin your phone camera vertically.
Oh. Like this? Wait, am I upside down? Okay.
I'm turning the volume off of the computer because we're getting feedback. Spin it so you're.
I'm sorry.
Instead of, is it horizontal? Yeah.
Keep going.
Keep going. Now I feel like we're in a rap video because you got like a cool angle.
Okay.
There we go. Yes, it's so much better.
I'm sorry.
So you guys, now we're both on Facebook and we're on YouTube. You guys welcome Miss Brittany. She owns Black History Rocks. Brittany, turn the volume down on your computer.
Okay.
Like just turn the speakers off. That way we don't have that feedback.
The feedback.
And since it's a simultaneous broadcast, you can hear it from one device. You don't have to hear it from both devices because then they just fight each other. Yes! We won the technology battle.
Is that?
Yeah.
We got it working.
All right. So y'all know I'm a hairstylist. I used to do lights and sound, but that was on a board and everything had inputs and outputs. It was much different than playing around with multiple phones and laptops. Hey, Alexandria. Good morning. Hey, Brandon. Thank y'all for joining us. So as I was saying, for Black History Month, I'm so excited to invite Miss Brittany to partner with me so we can share great Black history facts. I'm gonna let Miss Brittany introduce herself and Black History Rock. Tell us about you and why you started Black History Rock.
Okay, so my name is Brittany, and I have been for me, Black history has been a part of my development since I was 9 years old. So what happened for me is at 9, I switched from a predominantly white elementary school to a predominantly Black elementary school. And in switching from one school to the other, I saw that there was drastic differences in just the level of education that we received from one school to the other, and I really was unsure, like, why is this the case? Like, it's the same school system, it's the same city, and so I was just very unsure about why that was the case. And so one day I was watching a documentary on MTV of all places, and there was a segment that came on with Tupac on there. And in that segment, he talked about the Black Panthers. Then he talked about he was talking about knowledge, and it's very important that we get knowledge. And he was talking about our history and how Black history in particular, like, there's so much that we don't know, and how it's important to delve deep into our history so that we know where we've come from. And so he said that, and it sparked like this fire within me. And I was just like, wait, what is he talking about? And me at 9 years old, I got really curious, and I wanted to know more. And so I took a few names from the Black Power movement, and I started searching, and I found one person, and I started to learn about their story. And when you learn about one person, you don't just learn about that one person. You learn about all of the people that are connected to that person. And so you also learn about just a wide array. And then that kind of spills over, and you learn about more people and more movements and more things happening. And it kind of is just like a snowball effect where it grows and grows and grows and grows. And I was just like, oh my God, there's so much out here that I never knew. I never knew existed. I didn't know about like the Harlem Renaissance. I didn't know that there were movements that were happening that outside of, like, primarily we learn about the civil rights movement in school, and we learn a little bit about slavery, but it's not a lot. And so it just really like awoken like this desire to want to know more. And so for me, that is what started it. And my mom would let us walk to the library, and I would go to the library by my house, and I would ask the librarian, okay, so this is what I want to learn about. And she would take me over to the section and say, well, this is a good book to read. That's a good book to read. And before you know it, like, I'd read all the books in the library.
Oh my goodness.
Like, I was telling, every time I would learn something, I would tell my brother about it, my sister about it, my mom about it, my friends about it. I just was like, I had to teach everybody what I learned, because it was something that we just were not being taught. And I was just like, did you know about Billy? I'm like 9, 10, 11 years old. And I'm like, did you hear about Billie Holiday? I heard some really good music. You want to hear it? And they're like, what, Brittany? And so that's where it started for me, but it just continued. And as I got older, the passion for it grew. The need to know more grew, because it's so much, you never stop learning. I'm still learning now. And when I got out of high school, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to not only just learn about Black history, but I wanted to teach it, because there's just a need for it, in my opinion. Like, here we are in 2021, and there's still so much that's not known, that's not talked about, that that needs to be shared. And so I went in college. I went and got my bachelor's in African American Studies. I got my master's in African American Studies. And I created Black History Rocks as my way to share the stories that I learned over the years. I not only just like learn about it, I would hear about like a place or a movement or something, and I was like, wait, is there a location that I can go visit that'll show me, you know, like memorabilia or, you know, something that I can connect to. And so I travel and I go to museums, I go to historic sites. I oftentimes take my friends when we go on trips. Like if we go on trips, they know that I have to like find some kind of historic site to go and visit. But it has become something that has just been embedded in me, and I just wanted to share my passion for Black history with everybody else. So that's why I created Black History Rocks.
I love it. And I'm so glad you shared that story with us. I know we talked about it personally, but I wanted people to hear how passionate you are about it and how much experience and how like it is a big part of your whole life, so that when we're sharing this content, they realize that there's more than just that pretty graphic or just those couple of sentences. They realize that they can come to you or to your website, maybe shoot your email to learn more, to find out some of the monuments that you have been to, so they can also visit and take their kids. We're getting a lot of love on Instagram, especially from Exandria and Hannah. Hannah is a great teacher. She mostly works, but not exclusively, but she mostly works in the transracial adoptive world, because she herself is a transracial adoptee. And so she focuses on some history too, and bringing it into fold as far as, you know, bringing the cultural relevance, the current cultural relevance to the families, so that white families are more equipped to raise confident Black children that are empowered and not just, you know, in white spaces. And, you know, it's interesting that you talked about how the change from a primarily white school to a Black school really instigated or lit the fire under you, because you saw the difference or the disparities in the Black schools versus the white schools, but neither school was actually getting the proper education, because Black history isn't just Black, it's American history. And then a lot of times it's actually world history, because no matter how much they try to shun our history or put it under wraps or not talk about it or not put it in the books accurately, we made a lot of the progress, a lot of the inventions, a lot of the stuff started.
Everything it's interwoven in the fabric of our country. Without the contribution of Black people, we would not be where we are now. So it's really important to know that and to understand that it is an integral part of American history. It's not just this separate thing. Like we contributed to society, and without our contribution, we wouldn't be where we are now. But it's so like you said, it's important to see that and to know that and to understand that representation is like there were people out doing the work, making these contributions. Oftentimes their contributions are swept under the rug, and we know about for inventors like Garrett Morgan, he created the stoplight. We know the stoplight, we use it every day, but we don't know that it was a Black man who created that. So we use these contributions and these inventions and these, you know, ideas on an every basis, but we just don't understand that these were people in our community who made these contributions to society. So I think that is very important.
I think it's also important that young people know about more than just slavery and civil rights, because it changes your self-confidence when you know that you derived from, even if you do your genealogy and it says your great grandfather was a slave, but you also know that during slavery, Black people who were enslaved were making these contributions to society despite their place in society. So despite all odds, they were still overcoming, they were still contributing, they were still inventing. Matter of fact, a lot of the inventions came from the fact that they were overworked and they were tired, and it was a solution to a problem. You know, they were demanded to do X, Y, Z, and so they came up with ways to be more efficient at doing that. It came from a genius of having to work in that field. So So a lot of times I think when we learn about slavery in school, they omit all the great things that Black people did in spite of the horrible situation that slavery was, or they omit what we were before we were enslaved, or they omit how many people, like we're going to talk about a few of them, who actually freed themselves and were able to were I'm sitting in front of a mic. Somebody on Facebook said it's hard to hear me. There shouldn't be any feedback because I muted everything and I have on earbuds. So I'm sorry. Go over to Instagram. Instagram actually has good sound today. But let's see. Let me see. I got sidetracked. Brennan says circumstances do not define a placement. Love it. Yes, sir. Hannah said 100%, and then she said white-centric whitewash history tells a deficit-based narrative of Blackness. See, this is why you gotta have conversations with scholars, because guess what? My wording will sound like that's exactly what I'm trying to say. I'm the creative brain that likes to play in here. I'm not gonna give you all the good words that really describe what I'm trying to say. So that was one reason that I partnered with Brittany, because she is an expert in this. This is what she lives, breathes. She's obviously passionate about it, as you are.
It's a passion, yeah. It is my passion. It's something that, like, sometimes I can't put it to words. Like, it is something that is just a part of who I am. It's a part of me. It's been a part of me for so long. And it's a very important subject matter that I think not a lot of people talk about. And that need to know your true history, the contributions that Black people made to this society, and how it's really needed. It's needed.
So I know we also talked about, we decided for Black History Month, we were going to highlight Black women. And some of the reasons we decided that we were going to highlight Black women is because women in general are often not given the same space, but especially Black women. Black women are expected to carry a large part of the burden, if not all of it, in a lot of aspects. And then they're not given the credit, they're not celebrated, they're not appreciated. So, and then I also, especially for the people who follow me, I deal with a lot of white transracial adoptive families. And so in white culture, it seems to be this thought that Black people have been waiting to be saved, or that Black people are not people who were wealthy enough to give back or be philanthropists, that somehow we've always been suffering in plight, and that we've never built up in our own communities. And I really wanted to highlight, how Black women have been able to still excel in their careers and then give back to their community simultaneously. How in a lot of ways that even if they were not a mother, they were a mother in their community. So
initially about doing this campaign, I got super excited because there are a lot of Black women who have made a lot of contributions to our society in a whole that just don't get that shine. They don't get the highlights. They're not talked about. And so when you initially said, I was like, oh my gosh, I know so many women. And so we made a list, and from those lists, we broke it into categories. And each category, we then had a list of women, and we chose from that list 7 women to highlight each week. And did you want to talk about the theme? Do you want me to talk about the themes or the first theme that we're going to discuss?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first week, which will start on Monday, we're going to highlight artists. And these include everything from costume designers to dancers to writers. And we picked, did you want to discuss more about the desire to pick people now in from the past and now? Or
yeah, so I felt like it was important. Thanks, Hannah. Hannah said the historian in me high key can't wait for this. we decided to pick some people who were still living, some people who have made first, but we even don't, even though they're still living and they were the first in their field, we don't talk about them. We don't hear about them a lot. So it was kind of that idea of giving them flowers while they're here versus waiting until they're dead and then being like, oh my gosh, they were so awesome because they did X, Y, Z. It's again, a lot of times Black women, that's what ends up happening during their lifetime. They are not acknowledged and they are not celebrated. They're not supported. They are not financially supported. All their contributions are used, and then a couple years down the road, we're like, oh yeah, by the way, we're gonna go ahead and write this book and throw her in there because she was dope, or we're gonna give her an award because she was dope. So we wanted to kind of mix now and in our past, the people who paved the way before us and the people who are still paving the way.
Okay. So do you want me to go through the list of women that we chose? Okay. So for week one, for artists, we chose Barbara Brandon, who is a cartoonist, Elizabeth Keckley, who was a dressmaker, Octavia Butler, who was a writer, Ruth E. Carter, who was a costume designer, Judith Jameson, who was a dancer and artistic director, Georgia Douglas Johnson, who was a writer, and Zora Neale Hurston, who was also a writer and an anthropologist.
Thank you for the list. Hannah says she has to go take care of some stuff around the house, but she will be following this and following you and amplifying this all month. So we're also going to do Women's Month too. So we're not just going to stick with February. We're going to roll right into March. So you guys are actually getting 2 months of this. Let's talk a little bit.
So many women. That was the thing. I was telling Kanisha, I said there's so many women, and you was just like, oh, it's Women's History Month, and I was like, let's do it. Let's go, because it's so many women who deserve acknowledgement, who deserve to be talked about, who deserve their flowers. So,
and we still didn't, our list is still way longer than the 2 months worth of people that we picked. Yep. So there's lots of history out there. There's lots of wonderful women that we should be studying and sharing with our children. Exandria said some of those names she didn't know and she's excited to learn. That's awesome. So let's talk about Elizabeth Keckley a little bit, just because that was one of the first ones that we started researching, you mostly, and I just caught on.
You fell in love with her.
Oh my God.
She was an awesome lady. So Elizabeth Keckley was born in the 1800s, and she was enslaved. Her father was her slave owner. Her father raped her mom, and that's how she was conceived. But growing up,
he raped her mom also because he was trying to make more slaves. He wasn't a wealthy slave owner, but he wanted more slaves. So he decided, if I just produce them, then I'll increase my inventory. Like, think about that mentality that you have to do this. And then I think part of the reason I fell in love with Elizabeth Keckley is because when I really started to think about what all her life was like from conception.
She was conceived in trauma and born into trauma. And even in the midst of all the trauma, she still overcame it. And she still... Not only did she overcome it, but in the end, like, she created space for other people. Like, she created an organization that helped Black men, women, and children during the Civil War when they were coming into DC. So I'll go back a little bit and talk a little bit about, I'll start back from enslavement. So she was born enslaved. Her father was also her slave owner. When he passed away, he willed her to her sister. Her sister and her husband took possession of her. They were poor, and so she had a skill. She knew how to make dresses. She was a seamstress. She knew how to fix dresses. And so they took her skill and they sold it. And they started making money, but they were really mean to her. Like, they were really evil to her. The sister would make the husband like abuse her, beat her.
Not even only the husband, she'd bring in a neighbor man to abuse her. And Elizabeth, so Exandria, I'll have to type it in a minute, but her name is Elizabeth Keckley. Not only, so the sister, as we talked more, I realized like the sister despised Elizabeth Keckley because that was her sister, because Elizabeth was beautiful, because they were poor and white. And so instead of figuring out ways that she and her husband could increase their wealth, they basically put more work on Elizabeth. Now, mind you, she was already conceived because their family was poor. So she was conceived to bring more wealth and then forced to do the labor that would have been spread out over multiple slaves, but they couldn't afford it. So they forced her to do it. And then the sister decided, or her slave owner decided to open a school. And so then she was not only doing the work of the slave around the homestead, but also the school. And again, it was work that should have been spread out across multiple people while being abused and despised. Like, it's mind-blowing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. You really, like, she was one of the figures that for Kanisha, she really like connected with and had like, she was just like, oh my gosh, I got to know more about this lady. She is such an awesome person. So once she got older, she went, I think they hired her out to other people, and she developed her skills and got really good at making dresses, doing alterations. And she asked, I think her name was Louisa, I think that was her name. Don't quote me on that. But she asked for the ability to buy her freedom. And so they gave her this, in their minds, was an impossible price at the time. They told her, if you come up with $1,200, you can buy your freedom. $1,200 in the 1800s was a lot of money.
Wait,
but she
Brittany,
took that.
Hold on.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you still have your phone and your computer volume turned up? Can you turn the volume down on one or the other?
I have the volume on my computer on silent.
Okay. So the only thing you have volume on is the Instagram. Okay. They're saying on Facebook that they're still getting a lot of feedback, but I don't know how to get rid of the feedback. So you guys, you can switch over to Instagram. The Instagram has great sound today. I'm sorry that the sound is not so great. I don't know how to fix it. Okay, but don't like if you talk. So if you put yourself on mute there, they won't be able to hear you. So
oh, I'm sorry. I cut my volume down on my computer, so it's X on 0. Okay. So she was given an impossible price of $1,200. They said, if you can come up with $1,200, you can have your freedom. It took her years to get that price, to get that amount saved up. But she eventually got the $1,200 saved up, and she bought her freedom. So once she purchased her freedom, she moved to Washington, D.C. And with the skills that she had as a seamstress, she opened up a shop, and word got around that she was just like a really good seamstress. And so a lot of the politician wives and like women in Washington, D.C. Went to her to get dresses made, to get services done. And she started making dresses for the senators, one senator in particular, one senator's wife. And then word got around to Mary Todd Lincoln, who is the wife of Abraham Lincoln. And she asked her to create a dress for her. And she did. It was like an impossible deadline, but she was able, like, she worked really, really hard and like around the clock and got the dress done. And Mary Todd Lincoln was so impressed with the dress that she hired her to be her personal dressmaker. So she worked directly with Mary Todd Lincoln throughout her time in the White House. So
the thing that also got me was that Elizabeth Keckley's techniques for sewing dresses was relatively unheard of during those times. So women, you know, at that time wore huge petticoats and they had all these layers. And to change clothes from the daytime to the evening was an ordeal. And Mary Todd liked having a little bit more cleavage, but that was like a no-no back then. And so during the day, to try to keep some of the gossip down about her, she would try to dress a little bit more conservatively. And then in the evening, when they had functions, she wanted to have like a deeper neckline. So Elizabeth would design dresses with interchangeable parts. They weren't making a lot of dresses with interchangeable parts during that time. So she was essentially empowering women, even with the way that she sewed. She also, when women couldn't afford like a full dress made by her or couldn't afford to make a new one, she would alter their older dresses or take dresses from other people and alter them to make them new looking for the next person who needed it. And so in a lot of ways, like, even though it kind of comes back to me, to the slave owners who had her in the beginning, they were poor and they put all this weight on her because of their being poor. But when she goes forward, she's still empowering white women in those spaces who are not as affluent, but need to look a certain way so that they don't have all the rumors, so that they can perform whatever their duty in life was. And like for Mary Todd, it was to be Lincoln's wife and to keep him in political power and to make sure that she didn't diminish the people's trust in him. Mm-hmm. And Elizabeth was an integral part to that. Like, it's just mind-blowing to me. So I'm sorry. I'll stop getting on my little tangents.
One thing to mention is, like, when you go to the Smithsonian Museum of American History, there's a section where they have some of the outfits of first ladies throughout history. And so when you go and you see Mary Todd Lincoln's dresses, there are several. The dresses that you see on display are the dresses that Elizabeth Keckley created for her. But no one, like, if you don't know who Elizabeth Keckley is, you won't know. Like, these were her creations. So you can, like, go online, because they have some of the dresses online. You can go and you can actually see in real time, like, her dresses. And, like, without knowing the history, you don't know, like, there was a lady who, you know, Elizabeth Keckley was the lady who created these dresses. You don't put the two and two together. It's really important.
A lot of what's online, what people did know about her, if they did talk about her, was the scandal that kind of ended or slowed her career in the end, because she released a book. Now, mind you, she was a slave. The fact that she can even read and write is amazing. But she released a book, published a book, and it had some information about Mary Todd. And people at that time thought that it told too much. Like, she had been trusted to be around Mary Todd, and here she goes telling all this business. But really, Elizabeth thought she was helping a friend. She had become so close to Mary Todd. She was thought by releasing this book and what she was saying in it that it would change the public's perception of her and hopefully take some of the weight off of Mary Todd, who at this point was grieving her husband's.
Right. Yeah, and she, to help, like, with her financial situation. And so she thought, like, what she created was something that would shed light on, like, Mary Todd Lincoln and help her plight, like, after Abraham Lincoln died. But what it did, it was very salacious. And, you know, people looked down upon her, and it ultimately ended their friendship. But now, like, historians use it to get a better idea of the life of the Lincolns in the White House. So, you know, after that, like, it's still used now as a very integral part of understanding who the Lincolns were. But at that time, it was just like, you know, how dare you create this book talking about the intimate life of this lady. And so after their rift, rewind back. During the Civil War, Elizabeth Keckley created an organization that helped a lot of black men, women, and children who are escaping the South coming into DC, like, to help provide them with food and shelter, to help them transition, so to speak, into their new lives. So that was also important because I feel like she understood what it was like to be enslaved and then move from enslavement to freedom and not knowing where you're going. So she wanted to create a space for these people who were transitioning from enslavement to freedom. So that is very important to highlight. So she didn't just think about herself. She was thinking about the bigger picture. And then after the fallout between her and Mary Todd Lincoln, she started making dresses. She started making, I'm sorry, I see things popping up. So I was looking at that, but she started to, she went back and started creating more dresses, but her business wasn't as
lucrative.
It wasn't thriving like it was prior to the release of her book. And so she went to Wilberforce. I'm sorry if I messed the name of the school up, but she went there and she taught as the head of the Department of Sewing and Domestic Sciences for a while. And then she passed away in the early 1900s. But her life is just like a testament of like she went from enslavement and then she used the skills that she developed to create a whole new world. But those are stories that you just don't hear about that need to be talked about.
Right. So you guys, over the next 2 months, you will hear or you will see highlights of women that have similar legacies to this greatness that we're talking about for Elizabeth Keckley. Of course, it will be in formats of Instagram posts and Facebook posts, so we can't necessarily highlight as much as we would like to, which is why on Sundays, every Sunday at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, or maybe a few minutes after because we're playing with technology, but we'll be going live like we are today to kind of talk about why we chose who we chose and maybe elaborate on their stories. Lorelai K said, just goes to show that there was judgment and ugliness then as now, and maybe we don't have to shy away from the judgment. History depends on our voices. Very much so. And we need to give more voice to those who were trying to have a voice but were hushed. Stephanie on Instagram says, I love the story of strength, resilience, and so much more of this amazing woman. Thank y'all so much for the work you put into this. And I'm excited to learn even more about Miss Elizabeth. Thank you all. And thank you to Brittany, because I'm scatterbrained. Like, I just really appreciate Brittany's fashion. You know, everybody has their lane, and it is so great when you can come together and make something great. Like, I really appreciate Brittany's passion in learning Black history and wanting to teach it. So I'm excited to share with you guys. I'm excited to learn more, because yeah, some of these names that Brittany brought up, I didn't know who they were. I told her like what I wanted to talk about, and she was like, oh, I know this person and this person. The other great thing is, like I said, Brittany travels, and when she travels, she finds places to go actually see monuments and bring it to something tangible. So as we go over the next couple of weeks, she'll be able to mention some of the places that you can also see and take your kids to see and make it more tangible and realistic for them. So did you want to say anything else before we close out?
Thank you for having me. I'm super, super, super excited about this campaign and sharing the stories of these amazing women. I think that it's high time that people learn about them.
I agree. So Miss Lorelai, I put the comment up there because it makes it easier for everybody to see, and I would like people to join in the conversation. I definitely think that this is a community thing. Again, this isn't just Black history, this is our history as a whole. And so I think having that divide all this time and making it Black History Month where only Black people are celebrating or really getting into it is a misnomer. I need y'all to get into it. I need y'all to know that Black women have been great, and we're not asking for permission to be great. And when we are able to be great, when y'all, like when barriers are removed, it benefits everybody. And so it's just high time that we start operating in that greatness and it be welcomed, and that we celebrate each other and celebrate our past greatness as a whole. So that's my goal. I will, I guess, close us out. I appreciate everybody. If you haven't followed Black History Rocks yet, please follow Black History Rocks. She gives out a lot of great information, and over time there will be more like downloadables on her website, curriculums, all those great things, because that's what she loves doing. So you guys get acquainted with Brittany over at Black History Rocks, and I'll catch you all later with some hair care facts.
Bye-bye.
So it takes me just a minute to close everything out. And somehow I made this a huge screen. So we're still live because I gotta figure out how to exit the screen.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.